Hey guys, today we'll be discussing about the Boeing 737 MAX and why Boeing might lose $600 billion this year. Boeing had lapped up orders worth $600 billion for 5,000 of its flagship planes as the 737 MAX. But after two fatal accidents, killing 349 people in total, this order book is under risk. I'm Harish and today we're going to talk about the 737 MAX problem. Let's get into it. So the recent accident is being investigated, but early reports suggest that it is a problem that actually started a decade ago when a lot of flight carriers started demanding more fuel-efficient flights because the oil crisis in mid-2000s was skyrocketing. And because of this, major airline makers like Airbus and Boeing started developing more fuel-efficient versions of the engine. And because of this, they introduced the Boeing 737 and the Airbus 320. Both of these planes were commercially successful with a lot of major flight carriers opting for them. And both these airlines are still being used extensively. And because of this new opportunity of making more fuel-efficient engines, both these flights started to re-engineer and make the fuel efficiency better. Airbus quickly launched the Airbus A320neo. With the launch of A320neo, Neo stands for New Engine Option. It had a new Pratt & Whitney engine and a way better fuel efficiency. So now since Airbus launched its A320neo, Boeing had to do something. The Airbus A320 received more than 2,000 orders within a span of just 2 years. And something interesting happened back then. American Airlines placed an order for $38 billion, and this order was for the Boeing 737. So this was an indication from American Airlines that it liked the 737 of Boeing, and in the future it would like to see different versions of the 737 instead of a new flight line. It would just like to see new versions of the 737, and that's why Boeing's directors approved the launch of the 737 MAX. So the only difference between the A320neo and the 737 MAX was that A320 was working on the principle of something called the fly-by-wire. Now fly-by-wire is an aircraft control that uses electronic signals passed through a wire instead of using manually controlled cables. So the A320 used fly-by-wire while the 737 MAX did not use fly-by-wire and it was still using the manually controlled cables. The reason why Boeing did this was quite simple. The vision of the CEO of Boeing at that time was to keep the scope of work limited and to make everything seem simple instead of complicating it. So this is what he said: there are a lot of things we could do with the airplane, but what we want to do is to limit the scope of work. Boeing's commercial airplanes then Chief Executive Officer Jim Albaugh said a new feature called MCAS was introduced in the 737 MAX. MCAS stands for Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. Now the reason why there was MCAS in the Boeing 737 MAX was that the engines of the Boeing 737 MAX were a bit more lifted and moved forward. So because of this change in dimension, whenever the plane used to take off, its nose used to point a bit upwards, it used to pitch a bit up, and in order to lower this nose, the angle to a safe angle, they used MCAS, which is like a software that did the same. So in case the plane went like this, so in case the plane's nose pitched up, the plane would start stalling. So to prevent that, the MCAS would pitch the nose down. So in order to prevent stalling, the anti-stall system would pitch the nose down. And this MCAS used to work only when the plane was not on autopilot. And this is usually during takeoff and landing. And both the accidents happened shortly after takeoff. So this MCAS could be a reason. And another thing, MCAS wasn't involved in the manuals that were given to the pilots. Plus, especially in India, the simulation for 737 and the 737 MAX was the same. So the simulation that's given to pilots during training was the same for the 737 and the 737 MAX. And most pilots, even in the US, did not know about this new MCAS feature, which unfortunately caught them unawares. People also say that the MCAS overrides the pilot's controls. So even if the pilot is trying to control, the MCAS will override his controls in that scenario. One of the pilots in the US even complained, saying that the flight manual is inadequate and almost criminally insufficient. What was the impact? It might have led to the crash of the Ethiopian Airlines, which involved a 737 MAX. Plus, a lot of countries, and China was the first country. China grounded the plane first, followed by the European Union, then India, and then UK, and then Canada. US was backing up its safety claim, and because of that, US was the one of the last countries to ground the plane. The grounding will last from a minimum of 2 weeks to 2 months. When that's the period when Boeing will give the new update, and hope the update helps solve future issues and makes flying more safer for you, me, and everyone in this world. That's pretty much it. If you like the video, leave a thumbs up down below, and do comment, and do subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because that's when you'll get notified every single time I release a new video. See you.